All right, dude, let me tell you, this whole thing with my grandma, bless her soul, it was wild. Like straight up movie level drama. You've probably seen those clickbait headlines, right? Grandma left everything to the most loving grandchild? Yeah, that was my family. And you ain't gonna believe how it went down. So, my grandma Millie. Man, she was a force of nature. Not your typical sweet old lady baking cookies, though she did make a killer apple pie. Grandma Millie was sharp, witty, and had this way of seeing right through people. She didn't have a lot of money when she was young, but she was smart with investments, worked her tail off, and by the time she was in her late 80s, she'd accumulated quite a fortune. We're talking millions, no cap. A solid 8 figures. My parents, my aunts, my uncles, all my cousins, everyone knew about it. It was the elephant in the room at every family gathering. I'm Alex, by the way. I'm the middle child of her middle kid, if that makes sense. Always kind of flown under the radar. Not the golden boy, not the screw up. Just Alex. My relationship with Grandma Millie was different from everyone else's. We weren't big on grand gestures. No expensive gifts for her birthday. No huge flower bouquets every week. We'd just hang out. She taught me how to fish when I was a kid, how to play chess, how to fix a leaky faucet. We'd sit on her porch, drink iced tea, and just talk for hours about anything and everything. She'd tell me stories about growing up during the Depression, and I'd tell her about whatever dumb stuff my friends and I were into. It was real. It was quiet. It was, well, love. Then there were my cousins. On one side, you had Sarah. Oh, Sarah. She was the picture-perfect granddaughter. Straight A's, went to a fancy college, always showing up to grandma's with some designer scarf or a box of gourmet chocolates. Always posting on social media about how much she loved Grandma Millie. Pictures of them hugging, laughing, you know the drill. She called every single day, FaceTimed, organized family dinners. On the surface, she was the undisputed favorite. Everyone, including me, just assumed she'd inherit the lion's share. She always had an answer for everything, a plan. She was like a living, breathing LinkedIn profile. Then there was Mark, my older cousin. Mark was chill. He was a mechanic, kind of rough around the edges. He didn't call Grandma much, didn't buy her fancy stuff. But if her car broke down at 2 a.m., Mark was there. If her roof started leaking during a storm, Mark was on her roof with a tarp before anyone else even woke up. He fixed her old record player, installed her new smart TV. He was the silent helper. Grandma always just smiled when Mark was around. No big speeches, just quiet understanding. As Grandma got older, things started to get a little tense. She had a few scares, a couple of hospital stays, and with each one, the family anxiety about the will just cranked up a notch. Sarah started visiting twice a day, bringing homemade meals, reading books to Grandma. My aunts and uncles were practically camping out in her living room. I just kept doing what I always did. Showing up, listening, holding her hand when she was tired, telling her dumb jokes to make her laugh. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. It was just how we were. Eventually, Grandma Millie passed. It was peaceful. She went in her sleep, right in her own bed. We were all sad, obviously. She was a good woman, and we all loved her. But in the back of everyone's minds, there was this unspoken tension. The will. The reading was set for a week after the funeral. Her lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a stoic guy who'd been handling her affairs for decades, gathered everyone in her living room. It felt surreal. The air was thick with unspoken questions, hidden anxieties. Sarah was perched on the edge of the sofa, looking impeccably dressed, a polite, sad smile fixed on her face. Mark was slumped in an armchair, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, but respectful. My parents, aunts, uncles, everyone was there. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. He read through the initial formalities. The property, the small bequest to various charities, some specific sentimental items for my parents and aunts. Then he paused. and when he paused, man, you could cut the tension with a butter knife. He adjusted his glasses. Now, for the bulk of Mrs. Mildred Thompson's estate, he began, she has included a rather unique clause. He looked around the room, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. It states here, and I quote, my entire financial fortune, including all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and remaining assets, shall be bequeathed to the grandchild who, in my estimation, demonstrated the most profound and unconditional love for me throughout my life. A collective gasp. Then a silence so thick you could hear everyone's heart pounding. What now? My Aunt Carol stammered. Sarah's eyes, which had been fixed on Mr. Henderson, snapped to mine, then to Mark's, then back to the lawyer. You could almost see the gears turning in her head. And how exactly, my Uncle Ben chimed in, did she estimate this? Mr. Henderson leaned back, a small smile finally breaking through. Mrs. Thompson was a very wise woman. She left a detailed addendum outlining her methodology. It's not a simple matter of who called the most or sent the most gifts. Oh boy, this was going to be a trip. The next hour was like an episode of some crazy reality show. Mr. Henderson read out these tests, but they weren't like solve this riddle tests. They were observations, little assignments she'd subtly given us over the years or moments she'd paid close attention to. First up, he talked about the rose bush. Grandma Millie had this ancient, thorny rose bush in her backyard. It was her pride and joy, but it was a beast to maintain. About 2 years ago, she'd mentioned to each of us separately, "Oh, my back is acting up again. I just wish someone would prune that old rose bush. It's getting a bit wild." Mr. Henderson read, "Sarah, you told your grandmother you'd hire a professional gardener." "You did not. Mark, you offered to come over on a specific Saturday, but you had a flat tire that day and never rescheduled. Alex, you arrived 2 days later with heavy gloves and shears and pruned the entire bush, leaving a note that said, 'Got it, Grandma. Next time, give me a heads up before it tries to eat the mailman.'" Sarah looked indignant. "But I intended to hire someone. My schedule was just so packed." Mark just shrugged. "Yeah, my tire was shredded, dude." I forgot. I just kind of sat there, remembering the thorns, the sweat, the ridiculous amount of rose clippings. It wasn't about the bush, it was about the unspoken need. Next, the old photo album. Grandma always kept this old leather-bound photo album on her coffee table, full of faded pictures from her youth. About a year ago, she'd mentioned, "Oh, this old album, it's falling apart. I wish someone would take the time to scan these photos so they don't get lost forever." Mr. Henderson continued, "Sarah, you offered to take the album to a scanning service. You did not. Mark, you said you could probably do it, but never found the time. Alex, you borrowed the album for 2 weeks, scanned every single photo, digitally restored some of the damaged ones, and returned it with a USB drive and a new, acid-free archival box." Aunt Carol clapped her hand to her mouth. "Millie, you sneaky old fox." I remembered spending late nights hunched over my computer, carefully cleaning up those old sepia-toned images. It was tedious, but seeing her face light up when I gave her the USB drive, telling her stories about the people in the photos, that was the reward. Then came the one that hit different. About 6 months before she passed, Grandma had a really bad fall. She broke her hip. It was a scary time. We all visited her in the hospital, of course. Mr. Henderson's voice dropped a bit. During Mrs. Thompson's hospital stay, she was disoriented and sometimes confused. She mentioned to me that Sarah always brought flowers and chatted with the nurses, but spent most of her time on her phone. Mark brought her a specific brand of coffee she liked, but rarely stayed for more than 20 minutes. Alex, you sat by her bed for hours. You didn't just talk, you listened. You read aloud from her favorite book, even when she drifted off. You held her hand when she was scared, and when she asked for a very specific, almost impossible to find brand of peach jam from her childhood, You spent an entire day driving around to different specialty stores until you found it. I remembered that jam. It was a wild goose chase. She'd mentioned it in a moment of lucidity, a wistful memory. I just wanted to see her smile. The look on Sarah's face was priceless. It was a mix of shock, embarrassment, and pure fury. But the kicker, the absolute final nail in the coffin for anyone else, was about her cat, Mittens. Mittens was Grandma's grumpy old Persian. He was a terror to everyone except Grandma. She adored that cat. A few months ago, Grandma had to go into a special care facility for a few weeks for rehab. She was worried sick about Mittens. Mr. Henderson read, "Sarah, you arranged for a reputable pet sitting service to visit Mittens daily." They did, but only for 15 minutes at a time. Mark, you offered to check on Mittens, but your work schedule made it difficult to be consistent. Alex, you took Mittens into your home for the entire duration of your grandmother's stay. You dealt with his biting, his scratching, his hairballs. You sent your grandmother daily photo updates and even FaceTimed her with Mittens in your lap, even though the cat hated it. But the kicker, the absolute final nail in the coffin for anyone else, was about her cat, Mittens. Mittens was Grandma's grumpy old Persian. He was a terror to everyone except Grandma. She adored that cat. A few months ago, Grandma had to go into a special care facility for a few weeks for rehab. She was worried sick about Mittens. Mr. Henderson read, "Sarah, you arranged for a reputable pet sitting service to visit Mittens daily." They did, but only for 15 minutes at a time. Mark, you offered to check on Mittens, but your work schedule made it difficult to be consistent. Alex, you took Mittens into your home for the entire duration of your grandmother's stay. You dealt with his biting, his scratching, his hairballs. You sent your grandmother daily photo updates and even FaceTimed her with Mittens in your lap, even though the cat hated it. No, Cap, Mittens was a monster. My apartment looked like a snowstorm of cat hair. He hated me. I hated him. But Grandma loved him. And she was so worried. I just had to do it. It was the least I could do for her peace of mind. The air in the room was electric. Sarah was practically vibrating with rage. This is insane. This is ridiculous. All these little things? What about actual devotion? What about my countless calls, the gifts, the time I spent organizing everything? Mr. Henderson held up a hand. Mrs. Thompson anticipated such a reaction, Sarah. She wrote, "True love is not about grand gestures performed for an audience. It is about quiet attentiveness. It is about noticing the small, unspoken needs. It is about reliable presence, not just convenient performance. It is about valuing the person, not the potential inheritance." He cleared his throat one last time, and the weight of the moment settled over us all. Therefore, according to the will of Mildred Thompson and her outlined criteria, the beneficiary of her entire financial fortune is Alex. Boom. Just like that. My jaw probably hit the floor. Everyone else looked like they'd been hit by a truck. Sarah let out a strangled cry. Mark just slowly clapped, a small knowing smile on his face. My parents looked bewildered, then proud. It was chaos for a few minutes. Sarah was yelling about contesting the will, about how unfair it was. My aunts and uncles were murmuring, some confused, some seemingly in agreement with Grandma's crazy logic. Mark, bless him, just walked over, slapped me on the back, and said, "Dude," knew she had a soft spot for the ones who showed up when it actually mattered. I just stood there, still processing it. Millions. All those little things, the quiet acts, the stuff no one else even noticed. Grandma noticed. She wasn't just observing, she was feeling it. She wasn't looking for who acted the most loving, but who was the most loving. It's been a few months since then. Sarah did try to contest the will, but Mr. Henderson had all the evidence. Grandma's detailed notes. It was airtight. She eventually gave up. My relationship with my family is complicated now. Some are cool, some are definitely not. But honestly, I don't really care about the drama, the money. It's a lot, a crazy amount. I'm still figuring out what to do with it. But the real lesson, the thing that sticks with me, isn't about the money. It's about how Grandma taught me that true love, real connection, it's not always loud, it's in the quiet moments. It's in remembering the jam, pruning the bush, taking in the grumpy cat. It's showing up not just for the big moments, but for the messy, unglamorous ones too. And yeah, I still go out to her old house sometimes. I sit on the porch, drink iced tea. I think about her. And I smile because Grandma Millie, even in death, found a way to be exactly who she always was. Brutally honest, profoundly wise, and totally, unequivocally real. She loved me the most, not because I was perfect, but because I was just there. And for that, I'm forever grateful. It was crazy, for real, but it was her kind of crazy.